here we are going to build what I call a fast compost, where the object is that we've got a lot of green, a lot of brown, and everything in between. And because we are going to be getting the right amount of carbon and nitrogen with water and oxygen, those are the necessary components to feed the bacteria, which is the thermophilic bacteria, which heat it up. These are these beneficial microorganisms and bacteria. That's what makes the compost hot. And so essentially we have stockpiled enough volume that we can make one really big batch. We've got the comfrey, we have the beach grass, the beeches that I showed you, ordinary kitchen scrap compost, and you see there is the straw that I was talking about. So before we start, an important concept that I'd like everybody to take on board is that, so I've got to find a substitute for a tremendous volume of carbon, and doing the math on it, it actually pays for me to buy one large bale of straw and to supplement that with cardboard, lots and lots of cardboard, which is very readily available. A really, really good quality compost pile. And it saves me, because this wonderful compost is going to be fertilizing the garden. I don't have to go out and buy the soil amendments and the other commercial fertilizers. I'm concentrating on building a really super good quality compost, which is going to make the plants, feed them, and make them so healthy that they themselves will actually be able to repel the pests and the bugs. Healthy plants can do that. And compost is the gold of the garden and the key to a really good garden. And as I said, to get the carbon ratio that we need, it's an investment for us to buy one bale of straw, because we cannot on this property be able to grow enough of a crop. So we have some grass, nitrogen that was harvested, some fish guts, kitchen waste, potash. There's kelp. There's chicken compost, and I think, and I can't remember. I think it was down at Old Harbour where Julia and Amy and I had the talk about how to make the chicken coop and the chicken litter really work for your compost pile. Now, we have a mill as well, and we mill up all of our own wood, but we could use wood chips. I could have some bags of wood chips here very easily. Utilize this product, which is a good product. I mean, sawdust is good, but not in its new raw state. Because it takes longer to decompose, it's also taking nitrogen up from within the pile in order to help it break down. So if you are going to your sawdust and stick it off in the corner for a year, get yourself a big pile, and the very best way that you can activate this sawdust is to collect your winter pea buckets and chuck it on. That is your nitrogen that goes onto the sawdust pile, and let it sit for a year. Cover it, and that sawdust pile will slowly break down into a dark humus type material, and then incorporate it into the compost pile. So no sawdust with us today. We haven't got any rotted and no fresh. So, all right, that typically most people might start off with, say, some large spruce branches or something laid in a crisscross, just making a little bit of a floor for it to rest on, so it's not in direct contact. So essentially we'll start off with a layer of straw, and we'll just take a couple of sections and start just layering it from here, from this bit here up to about there. So we're just going to make a bed of straw and fluff it up and just layer it down here. Yeah. Okay, so jump in. We just get some sheets of straw, layer that bed, and we're just going to literally start layering it. And I'll show you how I turn it in and get it moist. Perfect. Okay. So by fluffing it up like this, we are incorporating a lot of air. And we need lots of air. So next thing is the comfrey. We bring this in just a little bit. You can walk on each of the sides, but you don't really, when you start building the pile, Tiffany, when you start building the pile, you don't want to be walking on it like this, because then you're compacting it. So we'll keep...
So the comfrey goes in whole, Margaret. You don't chop it up.
I don't. There we go. So we're wetting this down. Really good.
Now, do you do this every time you turn it? Wet it? And...
Every sort of like 2 layers. When you do carbon and nitrogen,
right,
wet it.
Okay.
The sawdust that last year, the fresh spruce sawdust from last year that I put in the chicken coop, and this has had a whole year just with the chickens just breaking down, and it's almost like
soil.
Good quality soil. So the next thing, if you keep watering it, you'll be surprised at how much water you need.
You're going to let them do that, right?
What it is doing by incorporating this into the compost pile, there's lots and lots of beneficial microorganisms and bacteria that are already in this, and it's already been breaking down. And so we are essentially making this compost pile up out of as many ingredients as we possibly can. We're going to be adding some kelp. Kelp has lots and lots and lots of beneficial properties, and it will all go into the mix. Okay, at the early stage, because it's a little bit stinky, this is where I use the fish. Mm-hmm. So,
well, they have to learn anyway,
Margaret. This is
Margaret.
not very safe.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so
that's all a matter of opinion. I bet if you were a crab, you'd think
that we used to have was starfish, but with the die-off, there are no starfish. We'll do another layer of straw. That's good. Now you're incorporating a lot of air into this. About a month ago, I chopped some comfrey. We've got beach grass. Let's do a layer of beach grass.
Margaret, what's the proportion of green to brown?
You're aiming for 25 to 1. 25% carbon, 1 nitrogen. Okay. I don't spend terribly long doing this, but I do just kind of
fluff it up a little
bit. Just a little bit like this. A little bit of fluffy mixing that you learn. You can keep shaping it as you go, like this. There you go, Julia. And we're throwing some kelp into the mix too. lots of good nutrients. This is kelp that is taken from the windrow that has been naturally...
See, we have a good source of this right in the village.
Fantastic. In the book with this grass. Number one, I laid it too thickly. And what happens when I come to turn the pile and you put the pitchfork in, it mats. It really mats up. And it's difficult to turn manually. Now I know most of the villages have machinery, so that wouldn't be as much of a problem. So, but I'm just, if you're doing it by hand, this is why I don't put too much at any one time, because when it mats up, it also it stops the air. The air isn't as free flowing. So I'm very careful to not to layer it on too thick at any one time. Okay, let's just throw on some other stuff. We've got household scraps, waste, I don't know. And again, if you have a pitchfork, you can just, move it around a little bit. So we have, today, we have the straw, we have kelp, we have the grass, we have vegetable trimmings, we have kitchen scraps. So another thing that we have here that Saskia did this morning, bless her, this is alder leaf mulch, because later on we're going to do the soil building, right, this is the sifted leaf mulch, and this is just the other organic matter that's left. And don't worry even about these small branches. These are actually quite beneficial because when they get incorporated, they're trapping air. So we're keeping track of all the different ingredients that are going in, right? Let's get some really nice big armfuls of comfrey and throw the comfrey on. I'll stack you up.
Thank you.
So essentially, I think that this could very easily, once it's established in the villages, this is the most beneficial green manure crop that the villagers can have. It's fodder for the chickens. It's wonderful. We're a little bit light on this end here. Wonderful for the compost. Wonderful to make teas out of. Its properties. It's got so many minerals. So now we need to do another brown. So let's get the cardboard. Now what I did yesterday, I spread it all out here because it is so much easier to break up. You see this when it's...
When you kind of pull the layers apart.
Yeah, and you literally, all we're wanting to do is to pull the layers apart and just...
You soak it first?
Soak it.
Get it good and wet?
Yeah, let nature. Let nature do it for you.
Sorry, I didn't have it too.
And just spread it out.
Don't worry
all
about
over.
tape and stuff?
I do. I thought there was, I'll have a little bucket. If you come across sticky stuff, you can put it in this bucket here. But just break it up, and this is something very readily available, I imagine, in all of the villages.
Safeway boxes, man, everywhere.
Yeah. Well, this is a good way to put them to use, and if you get them and then you flatten them,
right,
and you get be organized, flatten them, put them in an area which is your your compost cardboard spot, and then just prior to building, spread them all out and let the rain do the work for you. Now, are you surprised at how much water I'm adding?
Yes.
Common mistake is not adding enough. And it's much better to add too much than too little. So you understand why it's, and so better if you're not sure, add more as opposed to less. Okay. Moisture is really, really important. These are last year's Brussels sprouts. And what's nice about keeping them whole like this is that they will also stop the pile from becoming too. Here's some peat and last year's root cellar vegetable. I've got some more here actually somewhere. Here we go. Okay, let's do some more grass, beach grass.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
How many bags?
We, between all of us, we have pretty much the same scale, size, hoop houses and gardens that we're all going to be working. And you have to make a goodly amount of compost. So what we have stockpiled here in materials will, if you had 3 such piles, that will get you through the whole year. If you had 3 of what we're doing today, that's what you will be aiming for volume-wise. Because remember, when we get finished here, this pile will start out up here. And then when you cover it and it starts working, it's going to lessen and lessen and lessen. And then when you turn it and incorporate more air, it's going to kickstart those bacteria again, and they're going to work it like crazy, and then it's going to go down and down, and so you're left with, you know, just 1/3 of the volume of what you started out with. So if you times this by 3, that's the scale of the compost that you're looking, that will see you through for 1 season. Right? Okay, let's do the next one. Let's do some more straw.
You want to do the hot thing?
The art of building the compost pile is keeping its shape for as long as possible, which means keep bringing it out and shaping it as you go. Okay, let's do some more comfrey. Actually, you know, it's timing is the key. Being able to access and to get the materials at the propitious moment, because you cannot do this unless you have the volume of materials. Precious. The best time to do your compost is in the spring, while the plants are still on the, you know, they're building
right,
up.
Towards summer solstice?
Yes, then behind. And the other, you can take successive harvests off it. Like this was the first one that I did. You harvest all of it at one time. That was for this compost pile here. And then I go back, I clean the area, take off all the dead leaves, the debris and everything, and I take some compost and I feed it. Because you're taking an awful lot. And when you take from anything, you have to give back. Take, give back.
Right.
This is what gives it its strength to see it through. If you harvest at the wrong time, when it's too late, you're actually undermining its natural rhythm, its pattern of dieback and energy gain back into the roots, etc., etc. So it's all just part of the learning curve. The spring compost is the best compost because of the beach grass. If we did a bricks reading with a refractometer, it would be an exceptionally high reading. It would be 9.5 at least out of 10, because it's the energy is still building. It's still building. But if you leave it until it's gone past, even though it will still be good nitrogen, it's not going to have the same nutritional Brix factor. The Brix factor will be lower. It won't have as much sugar in it. So your whole focus is to get as much compost made in the spring, cover it up, let it do its thing, and concentrate on other stuff for the rest of the year. But take advantage of every tide that brings in kelp or eelgrass or whatever it is. Stockpile it, stockpile it, stockpile it.
Right.
Okay, so
And how does this stuff store? How long can you store it, like to get the nice eelgrass, say this time of year? If you start stockpiling it, I mean, I know the window's closing, but how long can you leave it sit? So say we got all that stuff back in May, and we were just ready to put a pile together.
I don't know how it works down with you. I mean, I just know my immediate local vicinity. I know every beach and every wind that comes from whatever direction and tide that will either bring stuff in or take it out. It's getting to know your local environment really, really intimately. And so with the eelgrass, typically we get the big storm, what I call the storm tides, in October. That's the time when the green eelgrass that you see in the bays now will start, they go brown, and they're basically just dying off. And then we get the southeast that comes in and get a good blow and wave action, and it will lift that eelgrass, that brown eelgrass, and it'll dump it on the beach over there. We call it Herring Cove. And from up here, I can even see with my spotting scope how deep the windrow of rolled eelgrass is. But this is in October, so I don't want that particular, I don't want to be making compost in October. So what I do is I collect the eelgrass and I use one of the hoop houses and I spread it this thick down one of the hoop houses, and literally, even though it's October, it dries it beautifully. And I just turn it for a few days, and then once it's in a state of, it doesn't have to be bone dry even, you can either bag it up or just let it dry out, you know, just fork it into a corner and just let it be. And then in the spring, I have I don't know what it's called, I'd have to show it to you, but it's like a big chopper, like a weed whacker thing in the middle, and it spins, and you can set it over a trash can, and it really chops up things finely, even the popweed. And so I feed all of this eelgrass into it, and it chops it up beautifully. And then I just turn that straight into my first compost pile of the spring. And honestly, I promise you, take that comfrey over to China and enter it in one of their compost competitions. I bet you it would win. You know, that eelgrass is amazing in the compost pile, all chopped up like that. So that's how I do it. It's because you're working with the natural elements of the seasons. The blow comes, it brings in a windrow, you collect it, you dry it, you store it, and then you use it in the compost for the spring, or you can dry it, and which is what I'm going to do this year, and use it in the root cellar for packing the vegetables in, because it works brilliantly, but it does have to be dry. It has to be bone dry to do that. But they say that kelp has a lot of antibacterial properties naturally within it, and it just made me question, why do I buy a bag of peat moss to store the vegetables in when that peat moss has come from somewhere else where it has been taken You know, it's a resource that is getting used up. So we're taking it from somewhere, and it's costing. It's costing me money too to buy it. When we have this wonderful natural product, this eelgrass, which has exactly the same properties. It's cushioning in between the vegetables. When you lay the vegetables on it, it's a lovely cushion. It is aerated. It's not going to be compacted. You do have to get it dry. You don't want moisture in there.
Okay, do you need to rinse it off?
No.
No? Okay.
And it is absolutely perfect. So I tried it. I just experimented with it. It's great. So that's why, even though with the peat moss for the root cellar, for storing the root vegetables, you can reuse it again and again and again. This is about my 4th year with the same peat moss, but I'm done with it. It can go into the compost because here on in, I'm just using the natural, locally sourced product. All right, so let's. I'm going to get my little bucket again, and let's do more cardboard, and then we can start throwing on some more
kelp.
More kelp.
With this whole bag?
You do. Now, the recycle place just by Safeway has so many egg cartons. This is garden waste scrap mixed with comfrey, mixed with anything. And another one of the chicken. Grass. I won't prick any fingers, I promise. So here we have some old wet eelgrass. So this, when it's dry, is absolutely lovely. It's absolutely. Now this is beginning to take shape. This is looking good. So this is probably your job, Sam. Here is garden soil that I have used a hoe along the pathways, and the beachcomber birds dig away in the garden, and the soil falls into the path, and weeds and grass grow. So I go along with a hoe, and I get it all and add it to the compost pile. And then we can keep spraying it down as well. Okay, we can do some more comfrey. That's good with the comfrey. And we can add more cardboard again. Julia, here's some ready to toss on. We'll keep on spraying it. So Tiffany,
Yes.
the rundown of materials, ingredients so far into the compost.
We've got straw, beach grass, aged chicken manure, comfrey, cardboard, garden scraps, kitchen scraps.
She's good. She's good. Sorry?
The reason for building the pile all in one day?
Because essentially the bulk, you're looking for a huge bulk. This will go 5 foot by 3 foot, and as high as we can make it. You don't want it any bigger than that because it will compress it too much and take the air out of the pile. This is a really nice size, 5 foot by 3 foot, and we'll work it up to as high as the materials that we have. But essentially, because we've got so much bulk now, and because we have made equal portions of the nitrogen, carbon, moisture, and oxygen, those bacteria are going to start working straight away and heating it up. And that's what we want. We want a nice hot compost pile, because this is a short season and we all have big hoop houses and gardens that we need a copious amount of compost. And so this is not a slow, just using your kitchen waste scraps and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. That's why we stockpile the ingredients and throw a top over them, but get enough so that you can make one big batch. And then I can show you that within a month how this is broken down.
Is this from being ready, Midge?
I could use that this fall.
Uh-huh.
See that bounce? I could use this in the fall. Like I said, this was June the 7th.
Okay.
That,
It was barely a month old then.
yeah. And see the texture?
Uh-huh.
And there's still warmth in it. There's still warmth in it. It's still working. If you put your hands in there, you can feel it's still breaking down.
So it's at its hottest.
On that first
Right.
burn.
And then it tends to cool more to more of a steady kind of a...
Starfish. But this is the finished compost that typically when you get your spring starts going, they're very small. They don't need a very rich soil at all.
Right.
So I've prepared a nice bed for them. I plant them. I let them grow up till they're about, teenage, big teenagers.
Right.
They need food. So I
That's food.
side dress with this. So I only just did it a couple of days ago. This is their side dressing, and this will feed them and take them to maturity. This will give them all the food that they need
for the rest of the summer.
For the whole rest of the summer.
Wow.
Then as this is used up, I'll move him here, and I will turn this one over to there, cover it, leave it for 3 weeks, turn it back, move this one here, and then finally, when I've got all my other compost ingredients, I'll move him down one and I'll build another pile. Just there.
Right.
You see, so
Yep.
it's like
No, I see your system. Yeah.
That's it. Have you got enough your end?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Okay, so we've got a few stones. Good. Okay, we're done. That's it.